Hello and welcome to The Dive presented by Honda. This is The Dive Season 4, Episode 42. It is Esports Christmas,
That's a
aka
lot.
free agency time, which means that everybody's getting signed. We got the rumors coming out, the leaks, the Wolf bombs, and then the Travis bombs that
The
are
Gaffy
trying to
grenades is
compete
what
with
DP prefers.
Gaffy grenades? Oh, no.
I don't know what the esports maniacos weapon of choice is, but we'll have to update that one too.
Is there some rivalry brewing between Jacob Wolf and Travis Gafford now? You know, because
that rivalry has been brewed.
I wasn't sure who Jacob was kind of like subtweeting, but I saw a number of tweets about like, I have never had a prediction wrong. I only tweeted out what I'm sure. You know, these things are damaging that other people are doing. And I was like, "Ooh, is that a Gafford and other people?"
Travis has been gloating and telling me that he's got everything right so far. So
Every journalist has 100%. They claim.
I've
not dug into those claims.
I've never gotten it wrung. Yeah,
my leaks are all correct, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, as well.
I only leak incorrect information, actually.
You're
By
0%.
process of elimination.
I only accidentally leak things, so all the things I have leaked are true, and I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, 100%, and just as impressive that you're on 0% mark. But tons and tons and tons of rosters have come out. We want to talk about some of the rumored roster moves. Obviously, a lot of it is like pretty safe to talk about, it feels like, because it's kind of been confirmed by multiple sources and journalists and whatnot. Some of the teams are still being built out, and some of these may change, but we're just going to kind of talk about them as we know right now.
Yeah, which is pretty much all of them except for Golden Guardians, because Golden Guardians has a thing where Hunter put out his video of them losing so much of their funding with all the NBA issues. So we can start at the top then. I think the top is easier to start at. We go top down, and honestly, we can generally sort by money, or just guesses on money for the rosters and for top down, because that's kind of how the tier list filters out. I did like a soft tier list yesterday on rumors, and I say, so let's start with Cloud9 and Team Liquid, the two that had some of the earliest leaks and the highest money numbers attached to those leaks. Let's go Cloud9. Start with the big cash cow. Perkz announced officially that he's leaving G2, and everything has been leaked about him going to Cloud9 with a massive buyout, between 4 and 5 million just for the buyout, and then many millions on top of that for his salary as well.
It is crazy, and like, is it just me that's a little bit worried about these numbers?
It is it's just you. I'm not worried at all. I'm just happy that
doesn't
he's
come
here.
out of my pocket. I don't care.
Yeah, but that's somebody else's money.
I'm like, this cannot be sustainable. Some of these numbers, like, I was actually really curious because I was thinking about the TL lineup and thinking about that as like a $5 million for 1 year kind of roster, right? And then C9 goes and they do like 5 million for one player. I don't know if you guys know this, but
Just
MLS
the buyout, even not even the salary.
So the MLS, the salary cap, I want to say is something like $4.24 million for the entire team, and that's a team of like 20 players, right? And that's a professional league that's in North America, and I would assume probably gets more viewership and stuff than the LCS. I don't actually know how that compares. MLS is pretty popular in North America now. I mean, it's not the Premier League or anything, but it's pretty popular, and it's a team
I don't watch
like,
it, Azale.
I don't watch
20
it.
people,
and I know that the
me and
NBA,
Mark, so that's two they don't have.
NFL salary caps are like 100 million or something, So
because we're the NFL now.
I mean, I'm just saying there's a wide berth apparently in the salary caps.
Honestly, I feel like we have been like when they compared viewership and stuff like that in the past, they have more often compared to stuff like the NFL.
I mean, I feel like the MLB is the one that a lot of times, especially when you start factoring in demographics, it's like the LCS is, and I'm probably wrong in this, but it's like way more popular between 18 and 34-year-olds or something.
But it's also usually comparing like Worlds viewership, like all of Worlds, to like the World Series or whatever.
Stats are not meant to paint the accurate picture. It's supposed to paint the picture that makes me look cool.
That's true. Okay.
I'm more popular than baseball.
Everything's fine. They can spend as much as they want definitely not going to go broke, and the league's not going to be gone. No, I'm just kidding. But C9, TL, those are the ones that obviously drop the most cash. I think as a result, they have the most exciting teams. As far as like some of the players coming in, the C9 one is really interesting. Everyone is talking so much about Perkz. I'm more curious about like how Fudge is going to do, because I do think that's going to be dictating a lot of the success, right? Like if they kept Licorice, I admittedly would have been probably more hyped for this team, because Licorice is more of a proven quantity, has been like the best top laner in NA for a long time. He was part of their semifinals run at Worlds, right? We kind of know that he can get a lot of that done. Fudge is more of an uncertainty to me. I know that he's been really good in Academy, but Academy, like, we're not now even comparing what people are projecting for this team to the LCS. It's not Academy versus LCS anymore. It's like Academy versus people are saying World Semifinals or bust, right? Like, if you don't at least make it that far, your team is a failure. That is the bar people are setting for this. And Fudge hasn't even played in the LCS.
Yeah, but I think it makes sense given that the rest of the talent on this roster, a lot of them have made semifinals. I mean, Licorice gone now, but he had made semifinals. Sven made semifinals. Vulcan had not. Perkz obviously has made finals and stuff. Blabber was technically on the roster in 2018, I believe.
He wasn't really playing.
But he wasn't really playing, yeah. It wasn't.
I remember a Jarvan game where he blind EQ'd over a wall.
Oh, into the side brush at mid?
Yeah, I don't remember anything else about that game or even several games surrounding it, but for some reason that play is burned into my mind.
Yeah, me too. I remember that.
Anyways, I think, just with Perkz' history in particular, it's hard to not want to start talking international aspirations for this team right away.
Of course.
That's what we were doing with Cloud9 last year. Didn't happen, so maybe we should slow down a little bit. But I think
speed it up. Finals or bust.
All right, world champs or bust. I think this team should be good. I mean, there's no way that you can look at this roster and predict them to be bad. I think it's just a question of, can they win North America and these two question marks. You mentioned Fudge. I'm still a little bit concerned about Blabber and Perkz and how they're going to work together, with how important jungle mid always is.
Perkz also. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go for it.
I was going to say, they also changed their coach, right? This is the first time that C9 is without Reaper in, 3-4 years that he was their head coach. And now it is Rainover, who I believe is going to be the head coach there. So, it's one of those, that's a big change too. And as much as I agree with you, and I want to say like this team is going to be amazing, I expect they will be. Obviously, Cloud9 also was expected to completely dominate summer after the spring that they had, and they kind of imploded. So things can happen. Sometimes things don't work out as planned. But, I do expect Fudge to be good. I do expect this team to be amazing. But that is kind of like my one big kind of flag right now, is just that the Fudge doesn't have the same level of experience as these other guys. And if your aspirations are really set as high as like really a deep run at the World Championship, I think that may be a question mark. The top laners at Worlds are insane.
So we discussed this last time, where my opinion on Fudge was more optimistic, and I guess like defaulting to trust with Cloud9 with Jack for their reasoning on making the decision to keep him and go with Fudge over Licorice. Because again, while Jack has made so many savvy business moves, and there are a lot of business ties, obviously he wanted to be able to sell Licorice for a lot of money to be able to fund stuff like the Perkz buy. He also has always done everything in his power to make the team a winning team. So I don't think they would have given up Licorice if Fudge wasn't on at least a comparable level with everything they have internally. So I'm actually really optimistic for this team. And as far as, yes, it is always legitimate to be wary of unproven players and players that haven't, especially international or high pressure situations, playoffs and stuff like that. You never know how they're going to
That's
perform.
my thing. It's just you just don't know yet, right? It's not that he can't be good or that I think he's bad.
Completely makes sense to have those concerns. I will say that especially given this last Worlds, I felt like there were a lot of double standards, and applying some of that logic for people who are like, Mad Lions, yeah, they got eliminated in play-ins, but it's because they're all rookies and they're also new and stuff like that. And then you have all of these LPL teams and all of these rookies that are dominating all the way up through the top of the tournament too. So I think that it's definitely a legitimate concern, but it's far and away is not this like hard bar that people have to get over where they're like, well, you have to do your time and you have to, have, this much experience before you're going to be able to pull off at that level. So I'm just super hyped for this.
That's what I was going to say.
We have, go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say that the hype level is like something we haven't
I'll
really
stay
addressed.
Up here hyped.
Yeah, dude. Like we're talking about like the concerns. Are they gonna win this, and that? It's like, but I mean, I feel like the fact that Perkz is joining is something that you just have to address as a whole. Like the amount of hype that comes with potentially getting one of the greatest Western players of all time into North America in what feels like the prime of his career is huge. And I feel like this rumor's been so long coming that we've all kind of like let the hype levels die down. But like, it's still absolutely insane to get a player of this talent into your region.
Thank you, Mark. As I was saying, one of the biggest things has always been solo laners holding us back on international performances for North America. We always got into these matchups and we're like, crap. Well, we're versus rookie now, or crap, we're versus X mid laner or X top laner that's just gonna dominate us. And so our team we have to like come up with a strategy where like we're completely team based and we do 5-on-5s, we try and scale or something like that, and then everyone's like, we're all this slower type of team. Now we legit have one of the best solo laners in the world, and yes, he has been playing AD carry, but he already had that quick swap back with Caps for the one season, and I have full confidence that he is going to be this giant force for the mid lane, especially here in North America. And I'm excited to see if having him play against a lot of these other mid laners is going to push them and change their styles a little bit. I feel like some of the criticisms of Team Liquid, most of them people would criticize Broxah for, some of the slow pace and jungling like that. But there would be few games where Jensen would also get some criticism, and people would be like, well, he's not moving around as much, and he's kind of, playing a little bit lazy or something like that. Even though he's one of the best mids, in the region, it was focused so much on laning. People would be like, well, I want to see him a little bit more flashy, moving around a little bit more. When you have Perkz or something like that, it removes one of the fears I had when Bjergsen retired of not having, enough competition in mid laners. So super excited anytime we get, more injections of big talent.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously an incredible player, and I have seen some people saying, "Oh, well, he's been in ADC mostly over these last couple of years. How do we even know he's going to be good?" Well, he played one split in spring, and he got 36 out of the 41 possible first place votes for All Pro, right? Yeah. So he was pretty definitively considered the best mid laner in their league in just spring. Yes, he did play AD in summer. But anytime I've checked out his stream or anything, he's grinding mid. Like he clearly wants to be a mid laner. That is why they are kind of making this swap. And he has to go somewhere else, right? They have two mid laners and they both want to play that role now. So I think it is going to be incredibly exciting. He's a super fun player to watch. I'm just really excited to see how this team does kind of gel. I also think it's cool, to your guys' point of how aggressive of a player he is. Cloud9 is always the team that it's been like, oh, well, all the North American teams, as you said, Kobe, like are kind of get put into this bucket at Worlds of like playing slow and scaling and team fight. Cloud9 with their success, they have kind of been the exception to that rule, right? They have been that team that is willing to scrap and skirmish and play aggressive. And, that is making me hopeful that Perkz can kind of like slot in there and maybe, help to amplify and improve their play style that they already have built up a foundation of.
The final thing too, I just have to throw in here is I love, I know it's so petty, but it's always so funny how much there's like that player will never go to North America, and the players themselves are tweeting it.
Perkz has a tweet of himself from like only 2018.
Yeah, Soaz had it before. Like just all the players are like, if you're going to North America, you just don't care about winning, and you're a sellout. Oh no, hey, welcome. Hey, Alphari too, huh? Like I just love that little bit of saltiness that comes from it because I am a shallow person. Which brings us to TL.
But a self-aware, shallow person.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The other big import, Alfari, arguably, we took arguably one of their best mid laners and arguably their best top laner. I think I would still put Wunder over Alfari personally, but at least Alfari is an absolute monster in lane and outside as well. Like he's a beast.
Yep, and I mean he was playing on Origin, obviously that didn't have a good summer, but Alfari was first All Pro, I believe, in summer, so he's obviously playing really really well and got the regular season nod. I'm excited to see how he'll do like on kind of like a star-studded roster, right? Because he's getting put with an absolutely amazing team. I think the fact that TL is bringing in Santorin is so good for them as well. There's no excuse to not succeed with this roster. I feel like, tactical. There were the question marks about him this year going into international play, kind of similar to what I had with Fudge, because it's like, okay, well, you're a rookie. How are you going to do? He did well at Worlds, and in play-ins in particular, he played very well. So I think people are more like couching that now. The rest of these guys I think have more experience. I don't actually know how much international experience Alfari has. That's something I'd have to actually double check on.
So people said I was talking about this a couple of days ago. I think he was on that Misfits lineup from 2018 with that.
That's what I thought.
But like it was so long ago, and so much of the focus was on Ignar and PoE a lot with that team that I think at least I forgot that Alfari was even there.
That's what I thought he was there, but I'd have to double check. But either way, I mean, this team has so much experience. Obviously, they've had over the last couple of years. It's been 3 years in a row at Worlds that TL has gone 3-3. If they don't get out of groups with this, then I think that is an absolute failure. They already were one of the biggest spenders, if not the biggest spender in the league. Now they're going to be like even beyond that, obviously with a massive contract for Jensen, $1 million+ for CoreJJ, $1 million+ for Jensen, $1 million+ for Alfari. I haven't heard rumors about what Santorin's is, but I've heard it's in the ballpark of $1 million as well. So it's like, okay, well, like you got the best players now. So you have all the best pieces. Now can your coaching staff actually bring it together and make this team really, really shine? Because there's absolutely no excuses for this team to not be incredible both regionally and internationally, I think.
Yeah. And, the little sprinkle on top of it is that Jack cleaned house with the coaching staff. We talked about it a little bit in the last time. But he actually burned down the house. Like only Dodo is survived and is staying over there. A lot of the analysts, a lot of the coaching
and Dodo's
staff
GM now too, right? So he's not even coaching anymore, I think.
Yeah, he was never really coached. He did a lot of different things. Different tasks for the team. But it is going to be. This is all on his touch. These are like handpicked pieces for him. So this is going to be a clash of so much money and so much time and so much effort for both Cloud9 and Team Liquid with everything invested, and both of them are going to feel like if they don't win, it's a failure. So we're going to have a failure next year. It's exciting. Mark's getting giddy already. He loves this type of stuff.
He loves failure.
He loves it.
Nothing makes me happier than when other people are sad. It's just the best. I think honestly, if I don't want to get too far into predictions, but this lineup has fewer question marks for me, I think, than the C9 one. Like we kind of talked about with Fudge and some of the synergy between Blabber and Perkz. I think Jensen and Santorin actually are going to fit together so well stylistically. Alfari, I think will integrate very well as well. There's always the question whenever you bring in 2 or more new players, are you going to be able to work as a team? But every team is going to have that question this split because every single team has radically changed their lineup. So in theory and on paper, TL should gel together super well right out the gate. And so I'm actually so stoked for this lineup.
I just wanted to add too, because again, Alfari, as I was talking about, he was literally on the 10th place team for LEC in summer, and yet he has number 1 gold difference at 10, number 1 CS difference at 10, number 1 damage per minute, on the 10th place team. Just to give more context for people, why a 10th place team top laner signing is being hyped up and is being talked up. For coming to North America, to the LCS.
I guess the next team we would probably talk about then is TSM. those teams, like this team feels more heavily kind of like rumor based. At least the Sword Art thing feels pretty heavily rumor based. I haven't seen anything that is like really confirmed it. Other than seeing Sword Art is in fact a free agent and like hearing rumors and so on and so
Double
forth.
Lift titling his stream "I love Sword Art Online." It's not a confirmation for you.
I mean, Reggie was on. He accidentally said POE when he was on Hotline League. He called in for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, this roster is all like 90%, except for the support position. So
so the roster is, if you guys haven't heard it, it would be Huni, Spica, POE, Double Lift, and Sword Art. The Huni one was a big surprise for me because I don't think that I feel like largely Huni's stock has been falling. Right, you know, he has not been rated as one of the top laners in the league for quite a long time. And you know, I was really surprised because Broken Blade is a guy with less experience, that it felt like they were pretty happy about his growth and so on and so forth. But then when I heard the Sword Art rumor, it made sense that they need one less import, and Huni doesn't count as an import anymore, and Broken Blade still does, as far as I know. So by getting this, they're actually getting like a regional top laner, you know, so to speak. Of course, then the discussion goes to, well, what about Licorice? What about Impact, who's also now a resident? But there's no guarantee that you actually can get those players. Of course, I do think that most people would have been, you know, much more excited had the announcement been, you know, Licorice or whatever to kind of like, I guess match some of the hype that was coming out of some of these other roster announcements. That said, you know, I'm interested to see how Huni would do with them, but like, I have less hype for this roster personally than I do for the TL and C9 one.
Yeah,
for sure. That's why I think the tier 1 is just Cloud9 and Team Liquid. I will say I think Huni is getting overly flamed right now.
Yeah,
he's getting just absolutely torched and just completely roasted. A lot of fans are super mad and sad to see Broken Blade go, which makes sense. As you mentioned, there is the NA residency thing. And I will say for Huni's recent performances with the stock dropping, the main argument for Huni has been like every player that I've talked to and coaching staff that you talk to talks about how much Huni does bring to the team and works with the team, trying to make everybody better, trying to take on a lot of responsibility for himself. And some of the players that have talked to me, I've talked about, okay, so he's making some of these mistakes and loses some of these matchups or makes some of these super aggressive plays because he's trying to make up the difference and carry too hard. That being said, you know, he also has made mechanical mistakes and, you know some of these things, and isn't like the, you know, world's final making Huni that.
And one small thing I think that added a little bit of fuel to the fire was Volley Sports Stats posted the CSD for top laners from summer, and he's last. He's 11th, right? Yeah. He's below also someone who didn't start, and he's significantly behind second last, which was Alarim. You know, he's negative 12.4 CSD at 15. Right, and guess who's on the other end? The people that the TSM fans wanted. Well, no, it's Licorice actually. Licorice is.
I was like, if it's Broken Blade at the top, then people were just like,
Broken Blade was in the middle, but he's still positive 2.5 versus negative 12.4. Obviously, team differences. You can talk about matchups. You can talk about whatever. But Licorice is at the top, Huni's at the bottom, so it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah. So I know for a fact for the Licorice thing. Obviously, TSM themselves would also like to have Licorice, but there was a large bidding war over Licorice, and I heard rumors that like it started super high and then ended up dropping down as teams started to pull out. But it was, you know, that was one of the things that Cloud9 was trying to use to get money to fund like this perks buyout and stuff. So I don't think they were gonna, you know, let Licorice go for cheap, no matter, you know, whoever wants.
Yeah, when you start getting into like the actual like GMing side of it, there's a lot of points to take on, and I think, you know, C9 seems to like doing these package deals. Like anytime you hear rumors, it's always this package deal that Jack, or I shouldn't say Jack, the C9 organization is trying to ship around. And so when we get to where apparently Licorice went, you'll also recognize a lot of other faces from the Cloud9 organization. And so it could easily be the kind of thing where TSM didn't want to.
They just want top laner.
Yeah, they didn't want to have to pay the premium to break that deal up or whatever it is. But the one thing I'll throw in there is that North America is a bit of a bidding war right now. You know, like the teams that are shelling out are generally doing the best. And I know TSM just won. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. But I think a lot of people are probably like, come on, you're TSM, you're one of the biggest orgs. You have like a $40 million training facility or something. Like, you couldn't buy out Licorice. You know, I think some fans probably feel that way, and I can empathize a little bit. And on the Huni point, it's just so hard to pin him down and talk about in a way that won't put you too far in one of the camps. If you defend him, you don't, it's like people think you don't acknowledge his flaws and the issues that he's had. If you flame him, it's like you think he's just a trash player who's siphoning money from North America. And it's like, no, I think he might have some real problems that could hurt this lineup, you know, and the truth is in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no way that Huni costs as much as Licorice costed as well, because there is so much, you know, all this past performances and that you're talking about here. So I think at the very least that I would be insanely surprised if it was actually even close for the
you're assuming that he has a significant pay decrease over the past, right? Because Huni had been making 1.2 1.4 million or whatever was the rumor, at least. So you're thinking he's making way less than that now. You know, Sword Art, if he comes, I think that's incredibly hype. You know, that is a world's finalist, you know, fresh off that performance coming in and joining here. I'm really excited to see, you know, what he would bring. You know, I think you talked about this and you made a video about this, Mark, you know, kind of the lack of killer instinct from TSM at Worlds, you know, and when they had winning situations, they never had that edge to actually like, you know, go
Sword Art
further.
goes in on that 9-man sleep.
Exactly.
Huni goes in on that 9-man sleep.
Yeah. So that's one thing that I think would be cool, not only with Sword Art, but with Huni. Yeah, right. Like, is that maybe it will change the dynamic and some of the approach to it. But I will say PoE also feels more in the like sit back and scale camp, right? You know, yes, I know anytime that's brought up, people are like, yeah, but he played Diana and he had that talent game, and you know, so yes, he does have that, but generally speaking, his style is more the like. You know, get himself going and maximize farm, and he's a great team fighter. So I'm going to be kind of interested to see where this team lands as far as what they want to do. It felt like for the most part, last year was the first year that TSM really wasn't a bot lane focused team with Doublelift. Like every team that Doublelift has been on and been winning on for the last number of years had always been mostly a team that was based around getting Doublelift ahead, and he would win you a championship. And Sword Art is known more as like a roamer, at least in the LPL, you know, less lane focused than some of the other supports. Of course, he is still a strong laning support. You know, PoE is more of that defensive guy as well. So I'm kind of wondering, like, you know, what is the style going to be here? Is it going to be play towards top lane, play towards Huni as they did with Broken Blade, and just be using kind of like Speak and Sword Art to do that? You know, are they going to be turned into this, like trying to turn Huni into more of a slow paced team, or like what are they going to do? You know, I'm really interested to see where they land with that, because I think that'll have a lot of impact on like the success of this team.
Yeah, I think when we talk about in theory how these lineups go together, I think there are some question marks about the TSM's play style and where they're going to be and the different levels of kind of inherent aggression, or how people view the game doesn't feel like it lines up quite as naturally for this team, but they could easily iron all that out.
And I would say some of these things that have like trailed these players around, because I'm assuming you're attaching like the aggressive tag to Huni and over pushing and dying to ganks and stuff, and this, you know, defensive tag.
Maybe
to, like,
I didn't say that. You said that.
PoE and stuff. I do think those are definitely oversimplified for people, because people love putting labels on stuff. And like a little caveat for PoE is like, outside of even the couple of Assassin champions, he has had games like Corki and stuff where he's super aggressive packaging, and he does move or moved a lot with Santorin to early jungle plays, and so I think it is a little bit more nuanced there. He definitely, yeah, exactly, obviously. I think that one of the bigger differences for me is that Bjergsen played a lot of support champions, and definitely did roam a lot with like, you know, Fiddlesticks and stuff like that, trying to make
Galio in the
a crazy amount of roams. Yeah, PoE definitely is. I'd say the difference is more like he's more of the hard carry player. I don't see him playing, you know, support champions. I feel like most teams that PoE is on, they're resource heavy for mid lane, and it can still be aggressive looks from the mid lane being resource heavy around that mid lane. But I definitely agree. It's more hard carry champions from him. And so then I would say that I wouldn't want him to change. I would want Huni to be the flexible one from top side, which I think he definitely is very capable of doing. And that would go hand in hand with what I was talking about with the players I talked to before, where they're like, he was doing it this way for so long because he has been on these teams. And I'm interested to see how that plays out, because I feel like every year that we have a new Huni signing, there's some sort of drama where it's like, oh my God, it's getting this much money. It better be this. Is this the year that we have the semifinals style Huni, or all this the debates and the speculation of what type of stuff that we see come out is super exciting. I'm more excited after 2 days of off season this year than I was for like almost the entire last half of last year. Like I'm just
oh no,
I'm already so freaking excited for LCS with all these roster moves and the shakeups, and it looking like we have, like, it's not just the Cloud9 TSM Team Liquid anymore. There's significant investment, it looks like, from much deeper down our roster of teams. What is this?
Well, I was gonna say, the thing that gets me excited, which we'll get into probably more in the second half of these teams, is that, like,
get into it now. I was gonna do a transition. So
I thought you were transitioning to 100 Thieves, but I wanted to. So that's why I was like trying to jump in before you got to 100 Thieves, which is a lot. You talk about investment. I think a lot of teams are actually investing not their money but their time into bringing up newer players. It feels like if you're not going to compete with these TL, C9s, TSMs, and 100 Thieves, I think in terms of the big spenders, it feels like finally a lot of these teams, because there's no relegation, go, I can just focus on getting cheaper talent that's less proven and trying to develop them and see if I can find some studs, diamonds in the rough that will eventually become the core of my roster in the future. Like, it's something that I'm so sick of seeing 8th, 9th place teams with like a collective 15 years of LCS experience starting, and no flame to the players. It's flaming the orgs for being like, you're not going to Worlds. You're not winning a championship. What are you doing with your time now? And so I'm excited to see finally some of these teams from the very beginning go, we can do that, as opposed to like trying to swap players in last minute, So
I think
we'll get into them in a
Mark's
second.
Like, no flame to the players, but flame to the orgs that are picking these freaking players.
No, not the specific.
I'm not blaming those players though.
if you get, I don't know. You know what?
I fully understood your point, right? It's the idea that, like, from a management standpoint, it just doesn't even make sense. If you're having all these veterans, you have like a tremendous amount of experience on your team, but it's players that have never really reached those high highs, and then every team is like, our goal is Worlds, or our goal is to win the championship. Yeah. It's like, no, it's not. So just get a bit more realistic about it. And I would much rather see, if you're not going to spend big and you're not going to compete with some of these top teams, then get 5 rookies. Get a bunch of young talent and see, as you say, like, who is going to be that next proven quantity. And even if it's a player that, like, you can build a roster around, that's obviously huge. But you can also almost take like the C9 approach, where you can start to sell some of these players and then maybe use that to find another player that you would be able to build a roster around. So I'm excited for a bit of that shift. Yes, there are some huge imports coming in, but I also do think that it feels like this is one of the years where there is more attention being paid towards NA talent, towards academy, which is cool. There's the amateur changes that also are coming through, which I think is going to be helpful for the league. So I do think that there's a lot of steps in the right direction for that. That being said, we have another team here who was the recipient of another roster, really, 100 Thieves. They obviously, it is rumored they basically just like bought all of Golden Guardians and then kept Someday. And I will say I'm a little surprised as to how that worked out, right? Because it feels a bit weird. It's like, did everyone agree to go as a package, but just didn't want to play with Hauntzer? Did 100 Thieves want to build around Someday and felt that this was the best board to build around him?
For sure wanted to play together. They put out their video that they talked about. The players wanted to stick together, and so they wanted to try and send off a package deal. So that was their goal from their side. Yeah,
Golden Guardians. There was going to be people going after some of these Golden Guardians players anyways, because some of them were free agents, like Huhi, who had a tremendous split in summer, and so Golden Guardians wasn't going to be able to keep this roster together with their financial situation. So I think it was about trying to find out where all the players could fit in, and 100 Thieves was the answer. And I don't think it's like a flame to Haunter, but it's like it's someday.
They're not.
How could you not be excited to play with someday in some regards? So, I'm stoked for this lineup because it's actually, even though it's under a new organization, I think technically it would be the least changed roster in the league if you talked about 4 players returning.
If you ignore the jerseys, the least changed.
If you ignore the jerseys, it's the same team.
Yeah.
It's the most consistent team. But it is true, I'm pretty sure. So it's funny. And I think that they should be a pretty good team. I think that this would be, one of the other teams that if things gel and someday really works with this lineup, they could be pushing into that other upper tiers that Kobe had.
Yeah, it depends on how excited you were for their playoff performance, because they ended 9-9. The Golden Guardians, that team with the whole roster with Haunter ended 9-9, and undoubtedly you're like, okay, there's no way 100 Thieves get rid of someday, so this makes sense. You keep this piece at the very least. But do you speculate on other of the pieces moving around? I know that Golden Guardians players want to stick together, and they definitely do have synergy, and their playoff performance, getting one game away from eliminating TSM, was deserving of also building more hype for Golden Guardians heading into the next year. So I think that team themselves were really looking forward to the future and making them grow and get much further than that 9-9 finish. And so it kind of depends on where you stood at that point too, with how you're going to see this team.
And I think it depends on if you think, Damonte is going to be able to compete with the elite mid laners, right? Because I think that when you look at the 3 teams that we already listed above them, they all have like the big stars of mid lane, right? That are in this league, with Bjergsen exiting. I think it's fair to say that those are kind of like the clear 3 biggest stars in the mid lane on those top 3 teams, and that's kind of been League of Legends for a really long time. Damonte is good. He obviously deserves to be on an LCS roster. I think that he has shown that he can compete with some of these some of these players. Obviously when they did take down TSM, obviously they lost them the second time around, but it'll be interesting because I think that will be one of the things that people are looking at when they're thinking like, can this team go to the next level? Is can Damonte step up and kind of achieve that next level, right? Because he's had moments in his career where he's taken down those absolute elite mid laners, but he hasn't, I don't think, had a split or a full year where he has performed on the same level as the absolute best mid laners in the region. And I think it takes something like that from him to move this roster from a strong 4th, 5th to an actual championship contender.
I always feel funny when I talk about Damonte because I'm always like, Damonte, Tanner, not a liability, Damonte time. I think he's good. Not
he's
great,
good, yeah.
But he made Worlds in 2019 with Huni. For people who don't remember, like they did legitimately beat out a lot of teams. I think it's fair to say it was maybe a weak year. TSM struggled, whatever. But they beat them then. And you don't always need the best in every position if your lineup works well. I think this team has plenty of other threats between FBI, closer, someday. And I don't want to like meme the whole like Malzahar duty thing, but if you can find a champ pool, and we have seen at times where Damonte does have a champ pool that really works for him.
Malzahar's OP in preseason.
I mean, his Kiana, he had one of the best Kianas in NA easily on an assassin champion. It's not like he's relegated to only supportive champions, but when Pobelter was the kind of staple safe mid who was going to really contribute to your team while not requiring a ton of resources and playing the team game, like Damonte can fill that in this kind of lineup. For me, I'm actually really excited to watch someday because he hasn't really gotten it done in North America. And you can talk about teammate struggles and organizational struggles, back when he was on Dignitas and all these different things. But I feel like you got a really solid lineup now with good org backing, pretty good coaching staff and stuff. And like, I'm excited to finally see someday hopefully deliver and start slamming kids all over the Rift because we all know he can do it. It's just like I want to see it really carry a team, which he sometimes feels like he falls into like the I'm playing the team game with a team that is going to struggle if I'm not hard carrying.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that Damonte has lanes on both sides that he can go to, and he has been very willing to play roam heavy style mid lane. Which I think from now on will always have a place in the meta. As much as as they do try and have good balance and make changes like that. It's not going to be back to the old world where it's like do and be only style. You have to perma roam, play like melee champions from the mid lane. But I think that style will always have a place, have a niche, no matter what meta there is. And someday an FBI have proven to be very, very capable carries, both of them individually and in their own rights. So like Mark is saying, I think they're as a team, it does look like there's a lot of really exciting options for them. And just hitting back to the very beginning where we're talking about level of investment from teams and organizations, 100 Thieves has been one of the ones that, despite not having the success of the other teams, has had at least that investment, or maybe even more, because they've invested tons of money and they've been outspoken about how disappointed they were that a lot of the early big money investment didn't find purchase past the initiation into the league when we first had the branding and everything. But they also have been investing very heavily in their academy and their amateur scene, trying to build players up. And so that's why I keep on thinking about, all right, this Golden Guardian pack of players wants to stay together, but they have not one, but two other hyped up junglers, Contracts and Kenvi, both, I guess both kind of sitting in academy right now. They haven't made announcements for either of them shifting. But there are definitely like extra pieces that 100 Thieves also have the possibility of shifting around. And that's why I wonder if as the season progresses, do they get into problems with, all right, the Golden Guardians boys wanted to move to a new team together. What happens if all of a sudden the new team wants to change a piece? Does it start to chip away, or how do internal things evolve with that?
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I will say FBI and Hootie, that's what I'm most excited to watch, because I think they were so damn good towards the summer playoffs and even really throughout summer. Their laning was incredible. So I'm so excited to see the continued development of that lane and see if they can really be like the best lane in the league, right? Because there was already arguments for that, in summer, and I think given a full year on a strong roster here, it'll be really interesting to see what they can do.
All right, let's keep on moving along.
EG?
Then. EG time. This is an interesting one.
Yeah.
This is my like what if tier. It's like what if everything works out? Then maybe you could challenge, right? This is the one where it's like you could maybe paint a picture in which it happens, but you're probably not betting on it happening.
Yeah, because so the rumored lineup, for people who don't know, is Impact, Svenskeren, Jizuke, Lost, and Ignar. And I think the reason that we all can see it working is there's a lot of aggressive pieces who at their peak have looked incredible. Jizuke, when he's on, can be like 1v9 carry. Svenskeren's a really aggressive jungler. Ignar's a great roamer. Those two can sync up and maybe play around Jizuke. Lost has been pretty good in the academy scene for a long period of time. He did get one small stint in the LCS, but he's basically been top of academy for extended period. And then Impact is a really, really solid top laner. So you can see this world where top's the weak side carry and support and jungler roaming around more the bot side of the map and around Jizuke and stuff. And if that all works, this team could be a bit of a threat. But I think there's a lot of question marks with these players individually as well, especially Jizuke. And given he got benched from EG in the middle of the last split in favor of Golden Glue and stuff, that it's weird to see him back starting.
Yeah. Maybe they are thinking that like this roster suits him better. I could see it through the lens of like, all right, well, the old roster had Huni, right? You had crazy top laner, like maybe want to put resources up there. Now they have Impact, who is going to be more that stalwart guy who doesn't need as many resources. So maybe the idea here is it's like clearly Impact is playing weak side. You can put more resources into Jizuke and have the guys behind him when he does go for these kind of crazy plays and when he is going to try to make things happen. I think through that lens, it makes some sense. And the reason I can be kind of like, well, what if, and maybe it could work out is like, we know Ignar can be really good. Svenskeren, he's not that far removed from being the MVP. Impact has been one of the best, most consistent top laners for a long time. And I think plays that weak side role, that tank role. And tanks are super OP in preseason. Yes, they got some nerfs, but they still seem absolutely broken. So this could be the year of impact just from that. and Jizuke, being that crazy aggressive player, if he can really make it work, that could be pretty amazing. Lost, you mentioned that he had that brief stint in the LCS, and it was like, if I recall correctly, that's when he came in on Echo Fox, and he was crushing it on Varus. And everyone's like, oh my God, this guy's the next big thing. And then people started banning Varus, and he kind of didn't really look that good on the other champions. But I always kind of thought that he was going to get back to the LCS because he had played at a very high level in those games that we did see. So I'm interested to see what his champion pool is going to look like. I'm interested to see, if he's able to play, enough champions at this really high level to be able to compete with the best bot lanes. Because I think if it can all come together, there is a lot of potential with this roster. I'm at least very excited to watch him play.
What I saw when I saw it was, I was like, I think they had more money to spend, and this is what they ended up with. Because a lot of roster moves, everyone looks at the roster they ended up with, and they're like, oh, why did they go for this? And try and make reasoning around X roster working this way or something like that. But I have heard that like they were willing to be like another big spender team, and wanted to make more moves. So I'm on the same board though. I am excited to see how it does work together, and there are possibilities there. Personally, I have the FlyQuest roster, even though they lost so much of their team. I have this one slightly above the EG one for my tier list.
They lost their whole team.
Yeah,
FlyQuest, yeah.
But look at what they replaced it with.
Yeah,
it's a really good Cloud9 pack. Plus, Jose Deodo had a good Worlds performance. And I think there is a reason to have a decent amount of hype around him. And then Johnson, him and Aphromoo for me were the best parts of Dig for last split, kind of dragging that team along for a lot of it. So honestly, I think I have a decent amount of hype for this reconstructed FlyQuest roster after they did so much work last year, on the team, on branding. They started getting all this success. And then they lose all the players, but I think they did pretty well with what they ended up with.
Yeah, I think you talk about some of the players who start standing out, get picked apart by other rosters, and get fatter paychecks. Kind of felt like they had with Golden Guardians, and FlyQuest was the other team, but they chose to like reload kind of, but in a way that still was also taking on new players.
Just in case people don't know who the roster is, the C9 players they got. So the whole rumored roster would be Licorice, Jose Deodo in jungle, Palafox, the C9 Academy, mid laner, and then Raze or Johnson. We're assuming Johnson is AD, and then Diamond, C9 Academy support.
Yeah, and so a lot of these guys, 3 of them, don't have LCS starting position experience really in Palafox, Jose Deodo, and Diamond. So that's really exciting to see. You also should have a pretty stable core with Licorice being arguably the best top laner in the league last year, and then Johnson, like you're saying, a bright spot on Dig. So it does feel like a pretty good combination of new talent with veterans. Someone made a pretty good point that like you have to feel bad for Licorice to end up on this team a little bit, because you went from potentially running back one of the teams that had the most successful historic run in North America of all time. And then you kind of get put into this bit of an experiment, I think it's fair to say, but one that we're all optimistic on, because there is talent here, and you're also getting a chance to develop new talent as well. And
yeah, I mean, if he was on C9 or TSM, people would be like, oh, are they going to World Semis? And now here you're like, is it going to work in NA?
Yeah, so it's a little feels bad, man, for Licorice, but as a fan of FlyQuest, as a fan of North America, I'm excited about this team.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting. To me, a lot of the success and failure is just going to be purely on some of these newer, unproven quantities, right? Like I have faith that Licorice is going to be good. You kind of have to wonder, can like Palafox and Diamond, can they kind of replicate some of the success that other C9 guys have had when they came up, right? Like, is this going to be a Zeyzal situation, where they have some of these young players coming up and having success rate out the gate? Because C9 Academy has been absolutely dominating, right? So they had this monster academy team for a long time. Diamond, Palafox, alongside some of the other names from academy that are potentially getting some chances, are some of the guys that people have been talking about as rumored players to be desired for the LCS, but maybe locked behind buyouts at Cloud9. So maybe like already had been ready for LCS. These are some players that could be very good right out of the gate. And if they are, then I think it's, again, like that's kind of the angle with, like, you know, what I was talking about with EG, where it's like, okay, well, if Diamond and Palafox are both great right out the gate, you know, and it all kind of just clicks, then maybe this team can go far. But there are a lot of question marks here, a lot of unproven quantities. You know, Johnson, yes, he was, I think, the bright spot alongside Aframu on Dig, but they weren't the best spot lane in the league, right? Mm-hmm. You have 2 academy players coming up. You have Jose Dioto, you know, who is, I believe, the second player from LATAM. I think I heard, you know, talking about that with Quas being the first, Crumbs was saying. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how he performs. I think he's an exciting young guy. At the very least, like, I like this approach for FlyQuest. You know, I'm really interested to watch a lot of their team and just kind of see the development, because this is one that does have some promise as well as some young NA talent.
I think at the very least, I do see a direction for the team, because Jose Dioto is good at being a lead jungler. Some junglers are the ones, you know, to cover lanes or to get called. He's definitely one of the junglers to actually lead a lot of early game plays, have jungle pathing, try and get players, laners to play around that. And I talk with Palafox a lot. I don't know, he is a mid laner that's definitely willing to do that from mid lane for around jungle. So I can definitely see the direction for this team. You kind of have Johnson and Diamond be your safety bottom, and then play top triangle off Licorice and Palafox, trying to coordinate stuff with Jose Dioto. So that's one of the reasons why you know, I was pretty excited for this roster, even though the EG one does have, you know, bigger star names with kind of bigger tags to them.
I feel like also the EG one is just going to be a treat to watch no matter what, because it's not going to be like this grinded out. Yeah, like you're watching a team explode in every game. Probably either it's them or their opponent. You don't know.
It'll be interesting. Do you guys want to move on to the next tier?
Yeah, we got a lot of questions.
This is like, so this EG and FlyQuest was about like what if tier, and now the next tier is kind of like, ooh,
probably not tier.
Probably not, you know. So we'll start with CLG. CLG, you know, had some pickups that were like notable, but very surprising. So CLG's rumored roster is Finn, Broxa, Pobelter, Turtle, and Smoothie. I think a lot of people were really surprised by the Finn one. You know, yes, he did make it like two worlds with Rogue, but like he was considered one of, if not the worst top laner in the LEC last year. You know, he was the worst as far as laning stats. He is a young player. He is a player that I think that, you know, if you're looking at the positive side of it, it's like, okay, CLG must think that there's a lot that you can develop from this guy. They must think that there's like, he is not anywhere near his ceiling, and he's going to get better and better. And, you know, he's going to do that on CLG, right? He's 21, he's young, blah, blah, blah. But as far as what Finn has shown us, it hasn't been that impressive, right? Like, so it was just surprising to see a player like of that caliber even imported. It's rare to see someone go to a major region, unless they're like a pretty highly sought after player.
Yeah. I think the key to it is that the import tag is along with it. And,
yeah.
You know, he was one of the most flamed
and he was
players.
Bought out.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not a big buyout, but
that's why I think a lot of people are having you know, brain explosion movements there.
Yeah. So I'll go to bat for Finn a little bit.
To bunt for him.
I'll bunt.
But are you going to get scared as soon as the first pitch is thrown? You're going to bat, and then you drop the bat and you run away.
I'll check swing. I went to bat for him, but you don't know what I did at the plate. I feel a little bad for him because he's going to get a lot of flame for a lot of the reasons that Azale was saying about like him being the weak spot, arguably, on Rogue. I think he got a little bit too much hate for the playoffs and Worlds run that he had, which was not super impressive. But I don't think I don't think he was considered, and I wouldn't consider him the worst top laner in LEC over the entire summer split. He is still relatively young in terms of the amount of experience he had. So like, you might think that this is someone you can continue to develop to that point. And yes, it's weird that he is the import, because usually you think about imports being like the best in the world. But he was mostly playing weak side. He didn't get a ton of resources a lot of the time, even though a lot of people say that he kind of prefers playing carries. And so maybe he wasn't really put in a position to play to his strengths in that rogue lineup. And like, there's so many other things that you can talk about with this roster. I feel bad flaming Finn for taking a contract where he could end up the best player on this lineup. I actually don't think it's that insane to say that he could be when you look at all the rest of the players there. And like, there's so many other things to dig into that, like the Finn signing is kind of the question mark on top, but it's mostly because I feel like people didn't respect him already, and then he got brought over, where it's like, well, what about some of the other moves that are being made with this lineup?
Yeah, I'm not trying to put Finn on blast. I'm just saying it is surprising, right?
I mean, it's hella surprising.
You can't deny that it was definitely a surprise.
And I'm not saying it's a good move either.
Finn was bought out from Rogue and picked up, and it's just, you're just not excited about it. I will say, before even knowing about Finn as a player at all, like before I even knew who he was, I was watching some of his games because he played Kled, and he was one of the only pros that was actually playing Kled. So I actually, before I really knew who the guy was, had watched quite a few of his games because I was just playing a lot of Kled at the time and felt like Kled was good in pro and should be played in pro, and no one was playing it. So I went up on Games Legends and I looked him up, and I was like, oh, this Finn guy's playing him. And I just actually double checked, he has an 80% win rate in competitive on Kled, which is really cool. And if I can recall correctly, I want to say he was known as like either a Kled expert or a Kled one trick in solo queue at some point, or something like that. Like, he was definitely known for his Kled. He's 8-2 on it. So obviously, he has this reputation as like the weak side top laner that they're going to put him on GP and just like let him get slammed by like ganks and whatever, and not going to help him on Rogue. So maybe he can turn over a new leaf here. Maybe, Brox can play towards him. Maybe he can play with some more of these aggressive picks. And I would be really interested to see, if that is kind of what we're going to get. But a lot of the decisions here for CLG are kind of like what people are less excited to talk about. You talked about, okay, well, if you're going to be down near the bottom, if you don't think you're going to be competing, they'll get young new players, right? CLG has definitely gone the opposite way. They picked up Broxa coming off of, a disappointing year with TL, where expectations were really high for him. People were really hyped. It didn't turn out as well, so they picked up him. Finn and Broxa both are kind of arguably coming off of like disappointing results at Worlds or whatever. So I think sentiment is lower around them. Then they have Pobelter, Turtle, and Smoothie. So those are all guys who have been around for a really long time, and I think that is what is all kind of compounding to make people feel pretty negatively about this roster. They might do all right, but Brox's expectations are low because people are disappointed with how he played on TL, Finn because of how he played at Worlds, and then you have 3 veterans who people are like, oh, okay, well, where's the rookies, right? In this, it's like an all-time high of wanting new NA talent and young players, and CLG went the other way and probably also can't compete with this roster. So it's just like, people just aren't going to be excited about it.
It's getting a little depressed mode in here. So I want to say that this is an improvement for CLG. Okay, at least this is better than CLG last year, for sure, for me. Yes, Finn and Broxa wanted to do better at Worlds, but they were at Worlds. I think Turtle went
Also
under the radar
Worlds.
as having a really good performance.
True, yeah.
And
Turtle
a
was
really
good,
good performance on the world stage. So I do think while people are very used to being so negative for CLG, and this is not going to compete with Cloud9 and Team Liquid off-season moves and stuff like that. I think you have to have different bars, from where you're starting from, and this is an improvement for sure for me, and I'm excited to see what the Pobelter, Turtle, Smoothie, these types of guys. I mean, we had a discussion where Reckless may have had a peak in his career 7 years into his career with his recent Worlds performance. So,
yeah.
I know that Turtle specifically is still extremely motivated, and that definitely showed. I know Pobelter is also extremely motivated still. So this is going to be one of those tests of proving kind of the other side of the argument of still having longevity of players.
Yeah, and the final capper I'll throw on this is just it's still North America. Like teams boom all the time. All those teams that we put above them, FlyQuest, EG, 100 Thieves, or TSM, they could boom. And like if this team has really strong teamwork, and like we're saying, a lot of these players have been around a long time, and then they could gel together and actually still perform in the top half of the league just based off that alone. Remember, Immortals was in the top half of the league for a vast majority of spring split last year. Basically just off the back of Smithy smite stealing and late game shot calling. So like those kinds of things can happen in this region. It's not like they're dead in the water, but the criticism that I have the most for this team is just that none of them have ever been the primary threats on their lineups really. And that makes it a little scary when it's a bunch of second fiddles stuck
counterpoint,
together.
Poe Belter was the primary threat when he got moved to CLG initially.
Oh, right. That went great.
Got him.
Got them a couple wins.
Next one up. Let's go with Dig first, and then Immortals and Golden Guardians will be the last two. Dignitas rumors as they stand right now. I'm gonna say that the sneaky rumor is still the most likely one, but this Dig roster has holes still, and needs more leaks, needs more updates. So currently the Haunter, Dardoch, actual no leaks or anything for the mid lane, and then sneaky Aphromoo bottom lane. When people just hear that and just see that, and since we have had pretty substantial leaks on Johnson leaving and then being able to sell him to FlyQuest, that should fund some more money to build up this dream that people have for sneaky Afro bottom lane, which is something where these are two of the oldest LCS players who have duoed on stream. They are two of the most successful streamer players, and them playing together would just be fun. Okay, honestly, there's a lot of competition in AD carry position right now for LCS because all the Oceanic AD carries that moved over we have like 3 really good ones now. So I think Sneaky's going to face a lot more competition in the AD carry role than he has in the past when it was just like him and Doublelift battling. But at the very least, that is a really fun to watch and hype bottom lane. I know Sneaky has just been, streaming for quite a while, and it's going to take some time to, gear back up. But Aphromoo, as we're saying with Johnson, was looking better than he has in a long time. So, thoughts on the streamer bot lane?
Looking forward to those Verizon shows coming out. It's one of those lineups to me where like it's a lot of names that I think could end up playing well. And it's not like it's kind of what I was saying before about some of this, like it's a lot of older names that I would be excited to see on other teams, but this specific grouping of them that we have right now, it doesn't get me super excited. I think they'll struggle. I think, Sneaky better than Johnson probably, especially with like shot calling and some of these things. Haunter, I think, would be an upgrade over what they were doing in top lane last split with Warlow and Viper and trying to figure all that stuff out. I'm a bit of a Haunter fan, so like I have no problem saying that like I think that's an upgrade, but I still don't see this team seriously pushing into challenger territory. It could be a playoff team, but I don't see much going much higher than that.
I mean, so much. You can't say that they could challenge for a title when you don't even know who their mid laner is, right?
Yeah,
and also,
and so many mid laners have been taken.
Exactly. That's the concern, is that it's like, okay, well, if you don't have some like crazy import hidden up your sleeve, you're probably starting to get lower on the tier of mid laners, right? You're probably going to be struggling a bit, to find a mid laner that could like match up with your aspirations for a title. What I will say is, I agree with you. I think the Haunter is underrated. I honestly have no idea what to expect from Sneaky coming back in. He is obviously stayed very active playing the game. He streams all the time. He is in high challenger and all this sort of stuff. And he was one of the best players in the league for many, many years. If he can come in and not have skipped a beat and play at that level, then him and Afro should be a strong bottom lane, right? And then you have like a good laning top laner. I think, some of the criticisms from Haunter come I think outside of his lane, but I think his lane itself is really good. He always has, very positive CSD, over his career. The question marks are going to come around, like, how is Dardoch going to work with the team? What is the team's play style going to be? because I do think that, like, you know, the criticisms you leveled towards CLG about, like, okay, who's the true carry? Like, who are you playing towards? I think that's somewhat true for this as well. I do think that Sneaky was generally more of the, like, number 2 guy. It was like, okay, they're playing towards High or Jensen or whatever, and that's like who they're camping for and getting ahead. And then Sneaky's going to come into the team fights and he's going to get you over the finish line, right? So I would be really curious, like, what the strategy is going to be here, especially if we get you know, like a mid-tier academy mid laner or something moving up to LCS, or we have no idea what they're going to do, right?
Sorry, I slapped my forehead in the middle there because the Fnatic announcement, Reckless leave. He's leaving. It's official now.
Yeah, I heard a rumor he might be going to G2 as well.
Yeah, so I heard that rumor, but now that the post is out, and like with this is the 2 biggest stars, you know, at least in terms of franchise star, with Perkz being synonymous with G2 and Reckless being synonymous with Fnatic now, that they're moving on. So it's just huge news that I had to react to.
I mean, the funniest thing to me is that it is Carlos just siphoning off the Fnatic stars. He's like, all right, we'll take Caps. I'm being greedy. I have 2 mid laners now. Okay, fine. We have Perkz. I'm gonna get Reckless over here now too. And he's just like slowly.
Next year, Jankos is like, I'm getting tired, and he's like, self-made.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I slowly yank the best parts of Fnatic off of them and rebuild them here on
Fnatic is a G2 farm team.
I was like, wait a second, Caps and Reckless. I've seen this before.
Well, I mean, I know we're mostly an NA show, but G2 looking like a real threat next year.
Yeah, I mean, I said this yesterday, but regardless of who they got to replace Perkz, I was still going to have G2 as an international threat, because there's no way that with the money that they got from the Perkz buyout, you don't get someone good. And then that they're securing not only Reckless for themselves after one of his best years, maybe his best year ever performing at Worlds, if they also weaken an opponent in the LEC by taking away Reckless from Fnatic, now Fnatic also have to fill a hole, also have to have a replacement. Those types of moves are some of the most devious moves, where you're making your team strong, but you're also weakening one of your biggest competitors. It's always, Fnatic, G2 at the top, regardless of how the early stages of the season with Rogue and Mad Lions went last time. That's how it ends up. So I think continually targets his opponents.
I think from like the business point of view and from like the just caring about G2 point of view, it's a brilliant move. I have seen a lot of angry European fans though on Twitter, even just with Perkz, where it's like, because there was a lot of rumors that Fnatic wanted Perkz, but that, like, right. Carlos doesn't want to make his competition stronger, right? And that makes sense, from his specific point of view. But then it gets into the arguments of like, okay, well, I get that from a business point of view and of winning LEC, but what about your stated goals of winning Worlds, right? Shouldn't you want the league to be as strong as possible? Shouldn't you want there to be that high level of competition? Because if they do kind of like pick apart Fnatic, and Fnatic can't compete with G2 anymore, G2 already wins every single time in the LEC. So, it doesn't help your international chances. That much is fair to say.
Yeah, and to be clear, in the Fnatic announcement, it doesn't say he's going to G2.
No.
It's just a speculated thing, and I think maybe he's kind of learned, or Carlos has learned from the TSM situation when they kind of put Doublelift back into the environment, and then he went on to win 4 straight titles with TL. He's like, I don't want to do that.
Back into the wild.
I can put him in a different environment. I can put Perkz to dominate in North America instead of my own league. So
yeah.
So it's one of those things where, like, I understand people who get upset about it, but I guess I can just be like, it's a cutthroat. Esports is competitive, and like, yeah, you want to win world championships, but the first step to get there is winning domestic and like this kind of stuff, and you don't want to put the cart in front of the horse or whatever. So I can understand some of that.
Yeah, definitely agree. All right, let's keep moving on some of these NA teams.
Yeah.
We got the last 2 teams we have are Golden Guardians as well as Immortals. Golden Guardians, there's not a lot known about them. We know that Golden Guardians lost their entire lineup, right? So they're going to be rebuilding fresh. have heard, rumors that Golden Guardians is going to be going with like a lot of young players. There's rumors floating out there about Niles and a Blaze Olive. Stixxay popped up, but I had heard rumors that maybe it was going to be rookies in the bottom lane too. I think that it's obviously a really tough offseason for them. They're really excited about the trajectory of their team. They lost all 5 of their players,
Yeah.
and they're kind of tasked with restarting. That's rough. I think just from the default position, when you lose your entire roster, because of money issues and things like that, where you're not able to compete with some of those teams as far as the bidding, you're already immediately expected by default to be down at the bottom of the standings. I think that's just a reality. So what I want to see from Golden Guardians is player development. I want to see, a Blaze Olive and Niles and whoever else they can bring in, built up and see if they can find players to develop alongside, right? And kind of try to take that journey of developing new young talent and using that as a kind of gateway to success for themselves in the LCS. And
Yeah.
I'm very happy to see that direction. I don't want to see everyone just grabbing up as many veterans that are left over and unsigned as they can and just trying to like scrape towards 6th or 7th. I'd much rather see you get 8th, 9th, 10th in spring, but have 5 rookies and build towards a more successful summer or more successful even 2022. Looking towards the future for Golden Guardians, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think I can basically lump my points for these two together, with the small exclusion of Revenge being a small talking point. But my opinion on them is the same. Like, yeah, I am more excited to watch an 8th place team with new talent than a 6th place team or 7th place team with a bunch of players that we've watched before. And then I think it's fine to lean into that. And like we haven't really had a team say like, our goal this year is this. Like it almost feels weird, like people don't want to admit that. Anyways, as I was saying, I'm more excited to watch a younger lineup be given a chance that isn't really saying we're going to try and win the split and go to Worlds. That's not their objective necessarily. And I think there's an open. I think fans are receptive to that with the push for rookie talent. And those two fans might be different groups. There might be fans like, I don't want you to do that. You guys suck. I don't want to watch you. But then there's going to be the other group of fans, and like you can appeal to them. And outside that one time, Golden Guardians had a lot of NA players, which wasn't even really their goal to like develop NA talent. They kind of just leaned into that once they discovered it, that was their roster. Like, I'm fine with this actually being your pillar. Like, I'd rather see this. And so
Our pillar is, we are broke, no money.
You can say that.
Colby, it's building up academy players.
I mean, I would, yeah, you can admit that you don't have $5 million to spend on a single player and perks or whatever the buyout plus contract's going to be, admit that. I don't care. Say you're like, I will be more invested if you tell me what your actual game plan is, your actual situation. I can empathize better. So I'm super down with both these teams' rosters, even if I'm not.
We haven't even said the Immortals roster yet, by the way.
Oh, sorry. The Immortals roster being Revenge, Xerxes, Insanity, Raze, and Destiny, most likely, though there is some flexibility still with both these lineups. And I know people might flame the Xerxes or Stixxay being like, oh, but these guys are older. I think having a stabilizing presence on younger lineups can be very useful. And so I don't think you need to go full 5-man new players. And I don't hate any individual pickup if 3 to 4 of them are new players and you want to have two veterans or something.
Yeah, I mean, to your point though, like we're memeing about pillars for the teams, fully embracing and saying, yeah, like we don't have the funding that we expected, so we're just gonna go as hard as we can, being the underdog team, trying to build up, and find the new players, find the next best. You get the underdog fans with that, fully embracing it and fully admitting it. The Immortals roster, I don't think gets really grouped in for me with the Golden Guardians, because Xerxes is legitimately really good. So is Raze, and the Raze pickup, you're also going to get so many of the Oceanic fans, because Raze is one of the most popular, if not the most Oceanic player. So like they're putting together a lot of pieces here. That plus like, we have the rank 1 North American player. That itself brings a lot with it. Revenge multi-time rank 1. I still remember when he quit specifically to go to school for, it was either medical or at least biology leading into medical. And everyone was super sad to see him go. And I was like, oh man, we'll be here for you when you decide to come back, kind of memeing. Now he's back. And he's coming off a fresh rank 1. So it's not like he's lost it or anything. I'm excited to see what happens with this squad. On the Rift, because it's also going to be a lower cost one, but isn't like fully investing that way, and does have a lot of high points, I think, to talk about.
I'm most excited about Revenge, I would say, because I'm kind of interested to see him get his shot in the LCS. People aren't as hot about how he was doing in Academy and whatnot, so I think some of the hype has cooled off. I mean, Mark, you would know more about his Academy performance. Obviously, he cast the league, but like Revenge is a really hard worker. When I talk to him, he seems like a really smart player, and the fact that he is fresh off rank 1 in solo queue and obviously like grinding really hard to improve. I think it's good to see those kind of players get a shot in LCS.
Yeah, he's weirdly a newer player, I think, than people would think, because the name has been around for a while. But this was actually his first competitive season, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he went to school instead.
Right. So
after the hype built up.
Yeah. So there's other tops who did a lot better than him in Academy. He was not one of the standout tops. There's Fake Gods. There's like Darshan was better. There's one other that I always blank on, but there was like 3 that people were like, oh, these guys are really the best tops in Academy. But all of them have way more experience than him. And so to your point, when you have a multi-time, number 1 on the ladder player, I think it's fair to give him a shot. And so he's going to have the player with the most upside and potential that you can possibly get in the top lane right now, probably outside maybe Niles, who has more competitive experience with the amount of time in collegiate and stuff like that. I think he actually has an extra year on Revenge despite being younger. So these 2 guys are both like huge diamonds in the rough, hopefully, that will develop, but you're not going to expect them to do great their first split. And so I'm excited to see both of them in for that reason. Like, I would have liked to have seen Fake God in the league somewhere right now too. I'm sad he's not, because he's also young. But Revenge, I think, deserves more chance than sounds like some of the fans are giving him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then obviously Raze, is from the OPL. He was just at Worlds. If you guys watched play-ins, he had a lot of personality. I think there was that one Ezreal game where he's like stopping mid-fight to like taunt his opponents and stuff, start dancing. So pretty funny. I think it'll be nice to see some of these OPL players come in and see how they can actually stack up. Obviously, we've seen FBI develop into a really, really good player in the LCS, and some of the other OPL players that are joining now here are going to have the potential to do that. So I'm kind of excited to see some of the growth on some of these guys, and also the return of Insanity. I think Insanity was pretty solid throughout a lot of last year. Had some really, really good games, and Immortals had a lot of those games where it was like small mistakes ended up kind of costing them wins. So if they could improve on that, I do think they can finish better than this kind of bottom grouping that we've given them. But of course, there's going to be a lot of question marks about it.
All right, let's get into some of the questions then, because we asked for a whole bunch of extra questions this episode, and we've already done like 70 plus minutes here. So anchor question number 1 from Tom Courtney on Enchanter itemization.
Tom Courtney here, longtime fan of the show. My question is regarding Moonstone Renewer. What do you think needs to change about that item to make it viable? In my opinion, it seems to be really weak right now, and I can't really think of many scenarios where it's ever better than Imperial Mandate. Balancing additional healing into the game can be really difficult, even with the extra additions of Grievous Wounds that were put in this preseason. But what do you think would need to change about Renewer in order to make it a more viable option on Enchanter supports and make it compete with Imperial Mandate, which seems like a very strong support item?
So I'm happy to take this one. I've been playing with a lot of Imperial Mandate. Imperial Mandate, I think, is absolutely OP on champions that have really easy ways to apply it. Like I tweeted about Nami. I think it's absolutely broken on Nami, because you put Nami E on your teammate, they shoot them, it applies your half and also detonates it in one go. That said,
tweet.
I think people are, there's other champions like Janna that's also incredible on, but people are building Imperial Mandate on champions that doesn't really make sense on, that don't have easy ways to apply it, right? Or have very niche ways to apply it. Moonstone Renewer, I think, is really strong on champions that don't have easy applications of slows or of of CC abilities. Like people are talking about things like Sona, right? Like this is, I think, an incredible item on Sona. It's so easy to hit an enemy champion with your Q. It's not necessarily as easy to have like an empowered E every time to apply a slow. Like that's your only way really to proc Imperial Mandate. That's not reliable enough for me to say that it's worthwhile. So I do think it's going to fit things like that. I do think that even some champions that do have CC but can't apply it constantly, it's not always going to be worthwhile, right? Like Morgana, people are talking about Morgana Imperial Mandate. I don't think it's that good, right? Like it's like only your binding is going to actually apply this debuff. Moonstone Renewer on Morgana, if you're trying to take a defensive stance or you're playing against a poke heavy lane, I think that could be good. So personally, I don't think it really needs to be reworked. They're already buffing it, and if it has strong numbers, it's gonna eventually get to this point where it's just like invalidating a lot of the poke that people are doing. And I think situationally, it could be really, really good.
Yeah, I don't think it ever becomes like a really interesting item to me, just to be honest. But they did significantly buff the healing that it gives. 30 more on the base healing, and they increased the max healing of it as well. So they're buffing up the numbers for it to make the healing more impactful. Still going to operate the same way though. All right, anchor question number 2. Dathon Weber or Weber. Let's go with Weber. Class or specific champion that has become meta since the preseason update.
Hey guys, Dathan here. With the preseason item update, what class of champion or specific champion do you think has been pulled to the meta more now than before the update? Things like the assassin class or Victor as a champion, things like that.
Yeah, easy answer. Looking at the win rates, all top champions, like 5 of them of the top junglers are all tanks, mainly because of Sunfire. Chem Tank has been in there for a couple of them, like Skarner. But just the burn damage that they have on Sunfire is really high right now. So they already put out a nerf for it. There was hotfix nerfed. It's still good after the hotfix nerf. So tank's still very good. Whenever we have something like this where tank items get buffed, people start playing the tanks again. People start focusing on team fights, and then they remain good after it gets nerfed back down because people are still focusing on team fighting and playing that way. And so I think that tanks for sure are going to be very viable. I don't see them nerfing Sunfire and Chem Tank and the like into the ground to where they're useless. So,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, with League being such a connected game, once something happens, like people start doing more of the counters. So if you have tanks being OP, then the only things that are really going to be viable are things that can kind of deal with tanks as well from the mid and bot lane. So higher DPS champions instead of burst or assassins or whatnot. And assassins didn't even really get a chance to come back in the meta yet. And like tanks are kind of the bane of assassins. I mean, sometimes assassins just go around the tanks and try and kill those squishy members.
I was gonna say there's some specific ones. Like Kha'Zix is still popping off. Kha'Zix is still
Alan with Duskblade is pretty scary too.
Yeah. So there's always like you hope for that nice balance between like tank, which needs DPS, which gets assassinated, which tank deals, and you hope you kind of get a triangle like that, but it doesn't always happen.
I think another thing helping it too, because I mentioned the Sunfire thing, the Kraken Slayer, that's supposed to be like the mythic, more DPS, more shred item with 2 damage on it, is booty. It's just straight up booty. And the defensive one, the bow,
Immortal Shield Bow,
shield bow, which sounds really weird, but is a thing. Shield and bow
shields.
Is much stronger than it. So that also is something that like, okay, so 80 carry itemization for more DPS and true damage is worse. Okay, that makes tanks better. And their strongest, go-to mythic is the defensive one that protects you against assassins. Kind of, funnels along the same line.
Freak was talking to me about how a lot of the best bot laners right now are actually mages. They're not even 80 carries. So I think we'll have to see what develops.
They nerfed
from
a
there.
bunch of the AP.
That's like always true though. In Solo win rates, people look at it, but then they're ignoring the play rate, right? Because even previous like Karthus and Swain, Heimerdinger, champions like this were always like really high win rate in bot lane. It doesn't mean that they can't work, but like right now the top 2 are Swain and Heimerdinger, right? But the pick rate is 1.5 and 0.3%. But then you have Jhin, who's a 33% pick rate and 54% win rate. Like Jhin is Omega Broken.
Okay.
Samira is really good. Ash, Vayne, MF are really good. Like, and they all have massively higher play rates than the mages.
Right now, favorite item. Mine is Prowler's Claw. It's getting 5 more AD on 10.24. The jump is a real jump. It's not like some of the other items where you have this little baby jump with the whatchamacallit, the melee
like,
bruiser item, which like barely puts you forward. Prowler's Claw is so fun for assassins because you have a real jump and you have the 15% damage amp. It's similar to the old Deathfire Grasp that they removed for being too good for assassins. So I'm a little bit worried for the item, but they did just buff it by 5 AD, so I'm in there.
I'm all about Runic Bulwark 2.0.
Okay.
The locket, I love being a skillless gamer who just shows up next to my teammates and provides value.
I appreciate you, Mark. You recognize, your role. I think that it's for sure best on tank supports. I think it's really hard to fit in for tank junglers or tank top laners because like Sunfire is just too insanely good. But for tank supports, definitely viable.
It's definitely really good. Yeah.
And I was gonna say in competitive, you never like if Sunfire gets nerfed and some of these other things come through, like it could be an item that just has to get picked up because you get to it faster for team fight. Like that's what happened with Runic Bulwark was it's just too much raw stat value to a team at like 50-minute Drake fights, and you get there ASAP, and
yeah,
who knows?
Yeah.
We'll have to see once competitive rolls around where it lands.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. This is the first time it feels like a support tank building true tank items doesn't feel troll though, because the items were so ridiculously strong that people are building like this new Sunfire on Thresh and just being like immune to death, and it's like, okay, well, I guess that's pretty good too. If you just can't die. So it'll be interesting. Lots of crazy stuff going on in preseason. We had intended to get to a bunch of Twitter questions. Since this became a full-length episode, we are now going to pivot towards doing like a mailroom episode where we just answer a bunch of questions. But we're going to do that at a later date. We will save a ton of the Twitter questions that you guys sent us. So thank you so much for sending us the questions on Anchor as well as Twitter. We really appreciate that. And thank you, Honda, as always, for making this episode possible. We're going to be keeping our eyes on preseason, on free agency, and we'll be back when something big happens, or maybe just to do that kind of mailroom episode next week. So we'll see you then.